If you're new here, these 2-year rebuilds are trade heavy. The only thing holding us back is the salary cap. And after all trades are done, after the season, we're going to have one free agency period and one draft to make this team even better. Today, we have the Indianapolis Colts on the agenda. And, they've had their issues. They're not a bad roster by any means, but the coaching from Frank Reich and then the interim Jeff Saturday, and now they have Shane Steichen coming in for 2023. Let's see if he can turn the team around. But we have a lot of pieces on this team that have just underperformed, one being Jonathan Taylor, who in 2021 was like the top running back in the league, but 2022 was such a down year for him. He was under 1,000 yards. He had an injury problem. He only played in 11 games, had under 900 yards, and only 4 touchdowns on the ground. And then we have 37-year-old Matt Ryan, who he's had a long career. He's had a pretty successful career as well. He does have good traits and good attributes, so we could look to use him for the season, or we could look to trade for a new one, because we do have a lot of trade pieces. Offensive line, we have Braden Smith, we have Quentin Nelson. There's some good pieces there, but we need to upgrade maybe left tackle and right guard. We need a new tight end, because Mo Alley Cox, Jelani Woods, and Kylan Granson, they're athletic, but they're not great receiving options, they're not great route runners. And then at receiver, we have Michael Pittman, we have Paris Campbell, we have Alec Pierce, who, as a rookie, had a pretty dang good year, I gotta say. And then on the defensive side of the ball, linebacking core is really good between Okereke and Shaq Leonard. Franklin, Zaire Franklin he's okay, but we could upgrade. Julian Blackmon, I believe, will be our free safety. Strong safety, we probably need to upgrade from Rodney McLeod. He's not the best. D-line is great, honestly, but if we can trade Buckner for something even better, like 2 pieces instead of just 1, then I'll do that. Cornerback room is phenomenal. Stephon Gilmore, Kenny Moore, Isaiah Rodgers. Isaiah Rodgers is one of the best young corners in the league, and we could look to develop him. But let's see what trades we can make. Alright, first trade is going to be one that just makes too much sense to me. We're going to be sending DeForest Buckner to the Commanders for Daron Payne, Montez Sweat, and Cam Curl. We need to upgrade a strong safety. We're getting Daron Payne back for DeForest Buckner, so not a huge downgrade. And we need to upgrade over Ngakoue, which I can now use to trade for something else, because we get Montez Sweat. Honestly, I think Raymond's going to be okay as our left tackle. I could even move him to right guard, and he might do fine there, actually. And then we just look to get one more offensive lineman. Because outside of, right guard, we're pretty solid everywhere. Alright, for our next trade, we're going to be sending Yannick Ngakoue, Rodney McLeod, and a future 2 to the Saints for Pete Werner to round out our linebacking core with Okereke and Leonard, and Eric McCoy to round out our offensive line. Alright, massive trade for our next one. We're sending a future 1 and 6 and a current 3 to the Cardinals for DeAndre Hopkins. Alright, and for what I think is going to be my final trade, going to send our first round pick and Paris Campbell to the Steelers for Pat Freiermuth, because we need a tight end, and we're not going to draft anything in the first round that's as good as him. Alright, and after all the trades, we go from an 81 overall to an 85. Not a bad jump. Offensive line looks much better now, even though all we really did was add Eric McCoy, right? Still looks better. Added Pat in the tight end room, added Hopkins. They're all stars, but hopefully we can get them up some dev traits this season with Matt Ryan slinging it. Add Pete Werner to the linebacking core, Cam Curl at strong safety. We swap out DeForest Buckner for Daron Payne and Montez Sweat. That's not too bad. I think this team looks really good now. So for re-signings, we're in a pretty good spot. $37 million. We really only have Daron Payne and Okereke to re-sign. And we can absolutely afford them, and we're going to have a little bit left over to spend in free agency, it looks like. We just pump this up, make sure he wants it. He might want a little more, but he takes it. That's cool. $27 million left to get Okereke, and then we can do whatever we want with the rest. He wants more, even though he has more interest in the team to pay. Makes sense. So, team goes 8-9. We're up to an 87 overall. We were 3rd in offensive points per game. Defensive pass yards per game were awful. 29th. And I didn't think defense was really going to be a problem. It could just be the Colts playbook. But for these 2-year rebuilds, I don't change playbooks, so we're just going to have to tough it out. See what we can do in free agency. I did re-sign Okereke, and we have 19 million left to... Ooh, Matt Ryan didn't do great, but he didn't do the worst, right? I mean, we were still third in offensive yards per game, but it might have just been Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss. Jeez. That's 29 touchdowns between them. That's crazy. Hopkins, I had a number 1 and slot, trying to get him a dev trait. 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns. 905 for Pittman is okay. 803 is the third option. And then I guess the Colts really just don't involve their tight ends. Kind of unfortunate because Pat definitely deserves better numbers than that. Sacks, Ryman allowed 11. I figured he'd be our weakest link, but it is what it is once again. It's not too bad though for a rookie. Defensively, 3 players over 100 tackles. Tackle for loss 14 for Payne, 12 for Grover Stewart, and 11 for Montez Sweat. Kwity Paye had a breakout that he didn't get during the season, so that's unfortunate. He did have 9 sacks, though. That's pretty good. 11 for Grover Stewart is really good for a D tackle. And the 7.5 for Montez Sweat, 6 for Deron Payne, and then 1 for a couple of other guys. Not a lot of sacks outside of those 4. Picks 5 for Kenny Moore, 4 for Isaiah Rodgers, 4 for Gilmore. Like I said, an amazing cornerback room. Shaquille Leonard, 2 picks. Cam Curl, 2 picks. And 1 for Okereke. Chase McLaughlin was okay. I'd rather draft a 7th round kicker to get me those numbers instead of re-signing him. And then Rigoberto Sanchez was pretty dang good. Here we are with the Chiefs and Eagles in the Super Bowl. Shocker. We actually did beat the Chiefs during the regular season, but we didn't beat enough other teams to actually be good enough. Anyway, let's take a look at yearly awards before we go take a look at our dev ups. If we have any, Jalen Hurts wins MVP, Nick Sirianni, Coach of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Jonathan Taylor at 2, Hopkins at 6, Defensive Player of the Year, nobody, because our defense was trash. Offensive Rookie, who was all the way down here? Alec Pierce, cool. Defensive Rookie, nobody. SQB, no Matt Ryan, that's great. Best running back, Taylor at 2. Receiver, Hopkins. Hopefully Hopkins gets a dev up. Quentin Nelson 9th for best O-line. No D linemen. Probably no linebackers. DB, we do get Kenny Moore, Gilmore, Rodgers. You would think our defense played well with all those picks, but no. We do get Hopkins up to a superstar, so that is very good for him. And outside of that, Kenny Moore also up to superstar, I believe, was a star before. Do get him up to superstar. You'd love to see it. Just give him zone, get him in the scheme fit. +1 speed, nice. The Eagles end up winning the Super Bowl 35-17 over the Chiefs. So unfortunately, defense was our weak spot. And Kwity Paye is probably the weakest spot on our defense, aside from Julian Blackmon. I did go after Peppers as well. He didn't want to sign here, even though he had more interest than Josh Allen. But we get Josh Allen on a huge contract who's going to slide over opposite of Montez Sweat on the D-line. Alright guys, so with Matt Ryan going down to a 67 overall and he just keeps declining, we need a quarterback. There were no good ones in the draft that I wanted. So we're going to go out, we're going to get Trey Lance, who is now backing up Brock Purdy in San Francisco, mind you. Trey Lance is going to be our new quarterback here in Indianapolis for a 2nd round pick next year. Alright, year 2 acquisitions include Trey Lance, Desmond Ridder, just in case, you know, and Josh Allen. Should be a much better team, even though we didn't change much. I think Trey Lance can lead us to the promised land. Crazy how the only changes were Trey Lance and Josh Allen, and we go 11-6 and win the division. The rest of the division was trash, but they were also trash last year. Let's go ahead and take a look at these stats on the season. We were 7th in offensive yards per game. Trey Lance, 4,200 yards, 38 touchdowns, 10 picks. Not a lot of yards, but the Colts playbook is more centered around rushing, with 1,900 yards and 17 touchdowns for Jonathan Taylor. And 306 for Zach Moss, 101 for Trey Lance. Receiving, Hopkins, 1,100 yards, 15 touchdowns, 1,000 yards and 3 for Alec Pierce, 808 for Freiermuth. So Pittman was on the bottom this year instead of Freiermuth. Interesting. Pittman at 606. Blocking, how did we do? Not bad. Raymond only allowed 5 this year. I will take it. Tackles, Okereke and Leonard, both over 100 again, and Kenny Moore, he was close enough. Tackle for loss, Deron Payne, Josh Allen, Montez Sweat, Shaq Leonard led the way. Grover Stewart only 7, he had a down year. 11.5 sacks from Josh Allen, 8 from Payne, 8 for Grover Stewart, 5 for Montez Sweat, and a couple here and there for the rest of the guys. 4 picks for Stephon Gilmore, 3 for Okereke, 2 for Kenny Moore, and 1 for a couple of other guys. Picks were definitely down this year, but the team performed better. Eddie Pinheiro was our kicker, who did worse than our kicker last year. I want to go see who's in free agency for that. Well, we're going to be sticking with Eddie Pinheiro, and let's see if we can beat the Ravens in the wild card round. Hopefully we don't lose by a field goal. We lost by 6. Could have been 2 field goals. Let's go ahead and take a look at what happened and why we lost. This team it should have done so much better. This team is pretty dang stacked in the grand scheme of things. Trey Lance did not have a great game, threw 2 picks, even with, ideal forcing passes. It was just not the best game. Jonathan Taylor did good. And, how was kicking? Pinheiro did miss 1 kick, so that could have affected a lot, honestly. The missed field goal mixed with 2 picks from Trey Lance was just not a recipe for a win, So let's sim to Super Bowl week, see if we had any dev-ups this season, see what's going on, and see who wins the Super Bowl. It's going to be Cowboys and Broncos in the Super Bowl, of course, because Madden loves the Cowboys, and their playbooks are, just some of the best ones in sim. As for dev-ups, I think Trey Lance was already a star, so that's kind of unfortunate. He did have a really good season. If we had a better playbook, like if we were in the Cowboys offense, I think we would have gone further. Honestly, we would have won more games. Trey Lance is really good in sim. He has the good traits, And then we just didn't have any dev-ups. And I think it has a lot to do with playbooks. Like if you play Madden, if you sim, how important playbooks are in sim, and the Colts playbooks just aren't it. But for these 2-year ones, like I said, I do not change the playbooks. It's kind of like an experiment to see what can happen, how good the team can get, and how well they can do in their playbook that they have, Honestly, kind of surprised to see that the Broncos won the Super Bowl. I did consider trading for Russell Wilson, but I was kind of planning for the future, even though this was our final year. It is what it is. He probably still wouldn't have won with our team because playbooks. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.